Thank you for tuning in. Sorry it took so long there. I was waiting for the computer to do its thing. Thank goodness we have such a long bumper music, right?
Yeah, right.
I want to put the cover of the book we're about to talk about on the podcast. So let's get out of that poinsettia picture. And the book is called Hope Never Dies, How 20 Late-Stage and Terminal Cancer Patients Beat the Odds. It is written by our guest, Rick Shapiro. Rick is a former practicing attorney, a leading consultant researcher, an educator in the field of safe, evidence-based, integrative, and alternative cancer treatments. He's an active board member of the Annie Appleseed Project, and his book, again, is called Hope Never Dies, How 20 Late-Stage and Terminal Cancer Patients Beat the Odds. I want to tell him a little story, and then we'll crank it in. Good morning, Rick. What an honor to have you on our show.
Good morning. It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
So when I was looking through the book, I wanted to tell you what I was reminded of. It's a quick little story. I lived on Long Island. Where are you right now? Where are you calling from?
I am calling from Scottsdale, Arizona, but I grew up on Long Island.
Oh, did you really? Okay, so do you know the Nassau Coliseum?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I was working there. My job was to basically sweep the floor. and there was an ice show going on, so there was nothing to do until after the show. And Peggy Fleming was supposed to be the star, but she was sick, and so there was a fill-in for her. And I'm sitting in the highest possible seat you could sit in, next to another floor sweeper. And I said, oh my gosh, you can see her smile from here. And he said, you would smile that big too if you just got the break of your life. And I said to him, you know, I think she got the break of her life because of that smile and not the other way around. And that's kind of what your book is talking about. It's talking about having a positive attitude, perhaps being the key to so much in life.
Well, certainly, from a cornerstone foundational perspective, having a positive attitude is a great starting place. It's very, very important, because when somebody is diagnosed with cancer, certainly at that moment in time, and perhaps for several days thereafter, you are scared to death. You see your mortality flying before your eyes.
Right.
You're in high stress mode. You're depressed. But at a certain point in time, whether it's a few days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, it's important to marshal up your inner resolve, your inner energies, and say, you know what? I don't think I need to be a statistic here. I'm an individual. Statistics don't apply to me necessarily. So it's important to have that positive attitude going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what I mean. I don't know how true it is. You've done the research, and it sounds like there's a lot of evidence of it being true, and maybe not always true. I don't know. But it is interesting how when you meet somebody who has conquered something that would have killed the average person, whether it's a disease or an accident or anything, how they pull through. A lot of times it is that statement to themselves that, you know what, I am not going to be defeated by this.
It is a foundation. It was prevalent across the board with everyone I interviewed, and in fact, the hundreds of people I've met at 23 cancer conferences around the country, in terms of their going forward and beating the odds and not being a statistic that came within the predictions of their conventional doctors when they said you've got 3 months to live, 6 months to live, 1 year to live. This is not just about 20 people. That's a microcosm. But it's foundational. It's not the end all. I'm not going to say that if you have a positive attitude, you're going to beat cancer.
Right.
But if you don't have that positive attitude to start off with, you're starting off in a really handicapped place.
Okay.
It's a critical starting point.
Okay, so with that as a way to begin this conversation, let's say you're walking down the hall of a hospital, and every one of those rooms has a patient in it that has the exact same cancer. But there's a number on the door, 10 meaning they've got an amazing attitude, 1 meaning they have a very poor attitude. What do you do to get the ones up to closer to 10? How do you get somebody to change their attitude? People
who are a 1, frequently they hear the words from their doctor or their doctors and others that say, I've got XYZ cancer, and the statistics say that I have a 20% chance of being alive in 5 years or a 10% chance of being alive in 2 years. If you can show them that that's not true, if you implement other treatments and therapies beyond the standard of care or in conjunction with the standard of care. The standard of care, as we all know, is chemo, radiation, and surgery primarily. Other tools to the toolbox, and you can have profound transformational impact on the path of cancer, controlling cancer, and making a change in your biochemistry, which can change the odds dramatically. If they're aware of those things, and that's part of the reason for this book, is to let people know that there are options out there, and that because you get a prognosis which is dire and dreary, it doesn't mean it has to be you. If you take certain steps, you can have a great opportunity to change the path of your cancer and your prognosis.
And what is amazing about your book is that all of these people that were interviewed for your book, they all had proof that they had what the doctor diagnosed. It wasn't like the doctors made a mistake.
That's a great point, Robin. I made sure that everyone I interviewed had biopsy-proven cancer. Not that someone thought they had cancer, they had a shadow on a scan on their lung. They all had serious cancer situations. And many of these people went through major cancer centers in this country. We all know which ones are the major cancer centers, and we're told, I'm sorry, it's time to get your affairs in order. We can arrange hospice. There's nothing more that we can do. And you know, I have a theory, Robin, that the world's divided into three sectors when someone's told they have cancer. Sector number one, people draw the blinds, they put their head under the pillow, and they go down rapidly. That is definitely related to attitude and mind-body. Number two, let's say you have a couple, and one person says to the spouse or the partner, hey, I've never been to Tahiti, I've never been to Europe, let's take that trip while I still can. And then sector number three says, you know what, I'm not going to accept this prognosis that I got. There have to be exceptions out there. There's got to be some stuff on the cutting edge and things that I can implement to me as a therapeutic treatment whereby I can be an exception, and maybe I can be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and in fact 25 plus years, as are many people in the book, despite the negative and dire prognosis.
There was a story we heard, now this is more about money than about cancer, but there was a story we heard about a hot dog vendor during the Depression who didn't know the Depression was going on. And he was just doing really well. And then somebody told him, you know there's a depression going on, right? And that's when he started losing business. It was like there was a mental attitude. And I wonder if that plays a role in cancer. Like when you find out that you have cancer, is it almost like being... I don't know, being stoned, or I don't mean stoned like with drugs, but I mean like in the Bible when they would stone you, that kind of stoned?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. It's when a doctor says, and I think it's terribly irresponsible when certain doctors say, I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones or Mr. Smith, but your situation is hopeless. You've only got 3 months to live. And when you hear these words from that expert, that doctor with the stethoscope around his or her neck, lots of people just believe it as absolute fact. And therefore, they go downhill quickly. So it takes that inner resolve, a strong person, and we need to let people know that there are other multifaceted interventions and therapies out there. But you raise a really good point, because a lot of people convey this concept of what I call false hopelessness. False hopelessness.
Yeah.
And it's not responsible, I think, because there are too many people out there that beat the odds. Why not you?
The book is a source of hope. I was going to ask you if you could tell us one of the stories in the book, just whichever one you want. They're all such positive stories. It'll give anybody hope if you're dealing with anything, cancer specifically, but anything. Maybe you're going through a divorce. Or maybe like you're at this time of year and you're not happy like you're supposed to be according to society, because maybe somebody died during this time of year in the past. Give us one of the stories if you could.
Sure, they're all quite frankly. I'll be happy to do that. All the 20 stories are inspirational and different and wonderful. But here's one, for example. There's a woman, Janet Summer. Janet, and by the way, in the book, in the chapters, I use full names. There's no John Does in here. Real people. Janet Summer, back in 1995, she was 45 years old at the time. Excuse me. She had metastatic lung cancer to both lungs. It had spread to her pancreas, her stomach, her liver, and her lymphatic system. She was told by a major cancer center in Ohio, Janet, you have 3 to 6 weeks to live.
Oh, wow.
Period. 3 to 6 weeks, not even 3 to 6 months. She did have surgery for the stomach mass, but don't forget it had spread from both lungs to her pancreas to her liver. She had 1 dose of chemotherapy, and at the time, Janet was 114 pounds. She was a slim gal, 5'6", 114. She went down in 3 weeks from 114 pounds to 72 pounds.
Wow.
And this is a direct quote from Janet. She said, quote, "I look like a concentration camp survivor." She was now in hospice care, and she was in hospice for over 1 year. Her conventional doctor said, "Janet, why don't you try something alternative?" And Janet's response was, having been brought up through the conventional allopathic mainstream system, was, "I can't do that. It's mere nonsense. It's for hippies." Reluctantly, she did try something else. In fact, she was in a wheelchair at the time. Her lungs were filled with fluid. She was on oxygen. She called up a macrobiotic counselor and had 8 wonderful women who loved her greatly make fresh meals for her every single day. Slowly, over the course of a full year, she got her strength back.
Wow.
And in fact, she said, at the end of each chapter, I say I have pearls of wisdom from the individuals. And she said to me, she said in the book, "I will never go off the diet. I have friends who are on the diet. Their tumors disappeared. Then they went off the diet. Their tumors came back, and they died." She said, "I used to be cynical and angry. I'm now more open and trusting. I thank God my doctor was open-minded, encouraged me to explore macrobiotics." She said, "We eat like pigs in America." And she said, "I thank God every morning for the new day before my feet hit the floor." And she ended the interview by saying, "Rick, never give up, never give up." That's just one of 20 stories, and I cover all your major cancers in the book. But yeah, and these are true stories. There's no nonsense here. These are real people.
And you have stories not just from the patients, but from other physicians, from their perspective.
Yes, absolutely. I've got 5 people that I consider to be international icons in the world of integrative medicine and complementary medicine. And they talk about the cancer industrial complex. They talk about conventional care and integrative care and what they're doing in their practices that are saving lives every day. And it's quite eye-opening. It's quite illuminating in terms of how you look at cancer and what can be done. And 3 of the people are medical doctors. One's a PhD, and the 5th individual is not a doctor or a PhD, but they're all brilliant in their own right. So it's great getting the insights from them as to what they are doing specifically in the world of cancer. They're all in the United States, and they do phenomenal work. These are the keynote speakers at conferences.
Were the doctors and the patients both very open when you told them about your endeavor, or were they maybe skeptical of maybe your true reason for doing this?
The great majority of them were very, very open-minded. And let me just point out, with respect to these individuals, the 20 individuals and the 5 doctors, I did not pay anyone $1 to be involved in this book, or vice versa. They were there because they wanted to be there and make a difference. So really there was not any skepticism. And in fact, I would say 75% of the people I interviewed, 15 out of 20, when I did interview them, they had tears, and they cried when I interviewed them, whether it was in person or on the phone, because I had them relive their whole experience. I mean, imagine walking in their shoes, and unfortunately, in America, 1 out of every 3 women during the course of her lifetime will get a diagnosis of cancer, and 1 out of every 2 men will get a diagnosis of cancer. And if I could just say one thing which is hot off the press, I got this morning. Yesterday, the future's not great, regardless of what you hear. Yesterday, a report was published in the New England Journal of Medicine 24 hours ago, which talked about the fact that the children of America are getting heavier and heavier, and we will have an incredible obesity epidemic. And although the world is getting heavier and has had an obesity epidemic for decades, the rates in the United States have been climbing faster than any other country. And it says at the end of this article here, it says, recent research has shown that obesity is carcinogenic. So it has to do with too much increased what they call screen time, meaning staring at your computer and TV and your mobile phones, and bad diets. And that's not a great harbinger for the future as to cancer in America and around the planet.
So is it more important that we eat healthy or that we have a healthy attitude, or do both of those need to be present in order to increase our chances of surviving?
Larry, to increase your chances of surviving, it really should be a multifaceted, multi-intervention approach, including, as you said, attitude. And that has to do with mind-body strategies to reduce stress, to reduce anxiety, and reduce situational depression. Because if we have a weak and compromised immune system, the immune system won't be able to do its job to detect cancer and fight cancer. Nutritional oncology is a real science. I'm not talking about eat in moderation, your 5 food groups, which we used to hear as kids, but it's a deep science about what to eat, what not to eat, and how it affects your body at the cellular level. Exercise regimens are critical. It can reduce the decline of muscle mass, alleviate anxiety and stress. It increases flow of oxygen-rich blood to the tissues. And whether you're in a wheelchair or you're ambulatory, you can move. Exercise is critical. And one more thing I do want to mention is supplementation. A lot of times supplementation gets a bad rap. Today, you can get supplements really anywhere, whether you go to your local grocery store or Costco or Walmart or wherever. But an intelligent, highly sophisticated supplementation strategy with the appropriate botanicals, vitamins, and extracts in the appropriate dosages for specific rationale delivered by experts can have a profound effect on altering the path of cancer. So if you put these things together in a sophisticated manner with the right experts, it can move mountains. It can make big changes.
Well, you are so extremely passionate about this. Did you have a close call personally, or did you know of anyone close to you that your passion is so high for helping people?
March 29th, 1996, my dad died of cancer. At the time, I knew nothing about cancer at all. And I still remember when the doctor came up to me on the 3rd floor at the hospital right here in the Phoenix area and said, "Rick, we look at your dad's situation as terminal." As time went on, I wondered, why do some people beat the odds? Why are there certain outliers out there or exceptions? And I looked for common denominators. I looked for rationale. And after I did a deep dive, really over the last 20 years, into thousands of studies, 100 books, 23 conferences at this point in time, picking the brains of and collaborating with internationally renowned experts, I came to these conclusions that are in the book. And it was my dad's death that made me really think about it, because I also had other family members, uncles, a grandfather who died of cancer. And cancer is now about to pass heart disease as the greatest killer in this country. If you think about it, 1.7 million people this year, 2017, will be diagnosed with cancer. 600,000, minimum 600,000 will die. And if you put that into statistics, that's 50,000 per month. That's about 12,000 per week. And if you think about it, I was thinking the other day, about 3,000 people died in 9/11. That's 4 9/11s per week.
Wow.
So, and if you think about, for us who are a certain age, go back to the war in Vietnam. It was around 50,000 Americans that died over 10 years. You have 50,000 Americans dying every month from cancer. So this is something we need to pay more attention to as to how we allocate our funds and our energy.
One of the easy questions that I could have asked, but I didn't, was how did an attorney become somebody who's an expert on cancer survival? And whatever that answer is isn't important. What's important, I can hear you, and I think your skills as an attorney make you very, very, let's see, what's the word, fit? You're very good at convincing us, as the jury, let's say, to take a look at this as alternative so that we don't have those big numbers. I think you're making a case, so to speak, from an attorney point of view, and we as the jury are trying to say, oh, wow, I think this attorney's making sense. We need to start eating healthier and having a better healthy attitude.
I question people's rationale. I question assumptions. I try and dig deep into why a certain path is picked. In conventional medicine, it's historically been a silver bullet mentality. Find the right chemo and blast the cancer. Find the right targeted agent and blast the cancer. It requires, cancer is wily. Cancer has mutations which change all the time, and it is complex. You need to come at it with a multifaceted approach to make your body inhospitable to cancer. Make it difficult for cancer to have an environment where it can foster continued growth throughout your body and then metastasize. But in the book, despite the fact people have metastasized cancer situations, and I'm talking about pancreatic, brain, prostate, lung, colon cancer, melanoma, etc., ovarian, these are people who are thriving 10, 15, 20 plus years later. In fact, 18 out of 20 are here 10 to 25 years later. 18 out of 20, 2 out of the 20 are here 5 to 10, and they are all alive and doing well despite the comments and predictions of their conventional medical practitioners.
Did you find the Annie Appleseed Project, or did they find you?
The first conference I ever went to was in January of 2010. It was the Annie Appleseed Project in Florida. It's a great group. I've been to every conference except for one since there, and in fact, I'm speaking there in March. I'm presenting at the conference. As you know, I'm on the board there. But it's a wonderful group. They bring in doctors and scientists, and most of the attendees happen to have cancer, either trying to keep it in remission or it's progressing, and they're looking for other therapeutic options, be they integrative or alternative. Just a wonderful conference in West Palm Beach. I found it.
The book is called Hope Never Dies. I have a copy of the book. If you would like it, call me. I'll leave it on the desk here for you, and you can come pick it up. The rest of us have to go buy it. I did find it on Amazon. Do you have a website you want to recommend, Rick?
Sure. www.hopeneverdies.com.
Okay. Thank you. Great interview. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
We'll be right back.
Here's what you may have missed on the John Tesh Radio Show.
So, for a man like me with an Italian wife who's an amazing cook, this is the best news ever. Here it is. Pasta, in and of itself, does not make us fat. Increasing your light exposure during the day and then decreasing it after dark helps synchronize your internal clock and is proven to boost moods. So the next time you're the grumpy one, get a dose of a cat video and you're going to feel better. I promise.
Intelligence for your life on the John Tesh Radio Show. Don't miss this stuff.
I'm a deputy.
I'm an artist.